The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
Obviously, we over budgeted last year. I hate to say that I was right, but I was right. So.
And I think that that's what we need to look at more, is trying to get back to what we used to be, where our churches and our families took care of each other instead of relying on the state.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
I take our constitutional rights, the constitutional rights of my constituents, very seriously.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
Mr. Speaker, no matter how you look at it, no matter how you boil this down, there is never any time that a parent's right to govern what their children see and what they're exposed to should ever be bypassed.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
We need to start making Idaho first. We need to start making America first.
We need to be protecting our First Amendment rights, not inventing ways to slowly chip away at them.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
They're all outlined I believe on page 3. So what you do is you take all of these different considerations and you weight them. So like the idea of the percentile is you'd like to get if you have to prioritize a group, doesn't it make sense to get the higher percentage of the group in as opposed to the lower percentage? It's like available jobs. If there's bigger demand for nursing than there is for radiology, for example, then if we're going to help businesses thrive, we need to feed the jobs that businesses are demanding. So this matrix will probably have about 9 measures, and those will be adjusted and tested. So, and specifically in the quartile situation, that's probably going to have a lower weight in the matrix than, say, a nursing or a similar medical type job. Does that make sense?
Down for one.
No, it doesn't. Sorry. Let's move on. That doesn't.
So the gentleman started off debating the bill, then he went to a question. I figured it was a gotcha question. Are we going back to debating the bill?
Yeah, I'll
debate the bill.
Sure, let's just clear the air. To debate against.
Someone has the floor.
Thank you, Representative. Our go-on rate, if we do the chat GPT or any research, our go-on rate in our state right now is increasing. I think one of the other important pieces here is our go-on rate for boys is increasing, and that's been a lagging factor. So we've done a better job, and that's been recent. So I would attribute to launch. I'm concerned about our legislative oversight of this. We talk a lot in here about the need to reduce our government footprint and to have a light hand with our government. But here we are building another government oversight committee. I'm really unsure how this committee will work hand in glove with the Workforce Development Council. When I did a little bit of research on the Workforce Development Council, there's 31 people that are in there to represent all different aspects of our workforce, whether it's government or forests or the medical professions. Seems like a pretty distinguished group. One of our gentlemen from the second floor is on it. And yes, we have representatives that are on it. I know Representative McCann served on it at one point. I know we have a senator on it. I believe we have we have a representative currently on that board. So I'm a little bit unhappy that we can't work within the bounds that we already have. Where I come from, that's the first thing you look at when there's a problem is work with the tools that you have without buying or building or looking for other ways to do it. Fix it inside. That's usually the first step. So I just feel like we're adding to our burden in an unnecessary way. Another board, another more spending, whether it's travel or just support for something like that, just feels heavy-handed to me. I don't see much in the bill that talks about education like teachers, and I believe we still have a teacher shortage. Talk a lot about healthcare. It concerns me with the quartile question that I had, because it looks to me like we're going to look for high-paying jobs, which is great, but we also need CNAs at all of our community or our senior housing situations.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Idaho Signal. We are on the air. I am still currently in Boise at the Capitol. It's good to see you all. Glad you're all here with us today. They're debating that, I guess, modification to the launch program, which you're seeing a lot of the folks that love the program push back on this because it's reining it in. Earlier in the debate, Representative Dale Hawkins stood up and said, I am been completely against this program, but if it's going to exist at its current state, we need to do something to rein it in because people are using it for what it's not intended. I don't know if you follow me on X, but I went to the in-demand career site to look at which of the top career fields were at the top of the list of the in-demand careers in Idaho. And I just sorted it by most in demand, and the website brought up massage therapist. So if that's what this this launch program was intended to do, was increase and help folks get into being a massage therapist, I'm not quite sure if that's the proper role of government. That being said, this bill is going to be debated, so we'll keep an eye on that and make sure that it gets. We'll keep the vote up. Go ahead and keep. If you guys want to keep the House up, we'll watch the vote happen here as they continue to debate. One story I do want to make sure we're paying attention here, of course, is if you saw the news that a sitting legislator had her farm raided by ICE, and they caught an violent, drug-addicted illegal alien who had been arrested and detained by ICE a couple of years ago, was found on her property in a recent raid by ICE here in Idaho. And this legislator has been somebody who has been actively voting and debating against any sort of immigration reform here in Idaho. So this is a big story. The news just broke. It broke locally. Of course, it was spun by the left as trying to paint her as some sort of victim here, when in fact it's the community at large that is the victim by having a violent criminal of this type employed here in our country, which this should not be the case, as you know out there. So that being said, this is somebody who continuously votes and advocates for defeating the immigration reform bills that are going through the House and the Senate, and a lot of these things keep getting stalled, and so you kind of wonder what is the network, the underground network here in the Capitol that continues to push back on these reforms. There's an E-Verify bill that is in the House State Affairs Committee that hasn't gotten a hearing yet. And there's been other bills that have been either defeated or sent somewhere or just having their teeth taken out. So this is an area, obviously, that is of big importance in the Trump administration, and I just don't understand why we can't get Idaho on board. So, yeah. Other than that, folks, been trying to keep track on the Boise situation, the Boise school district situation. So we're still maintaining our attention on that as well to keep our girls safe. There was a House Bill 264, I believe it was, passed the House earlier today, this morning. That was presented by Representative Barbara Ehart, and she had a great debate on it. There was no opposing debate because the bill had already passed the House once prior. It got amended slightly in the Senate, and it came back to the House, and it passed as well. So what happens in the K through 12 schools will also happen in higher ed. It'll also happen in our women's prisons and our juvenile centers, and it will keep women and girls safe, which is fantastic. So one quick note from last night, I was able to attend a town hall in Nampa, District 13. Got to meet some great patriots out there, some loyal viewers of Idaho Signal. So it was really great to see you folks out there. Senator Brian Lenny and Representative Steve Tanner from District 13 were out there answering questions from the folks there at the town hall. So it was a really good, robust discussion. Some of the hot topics, of course, immigration, like we just discussed, as well as what happened with the the raid on Representative Nichols' farm and what that means for the House, because, the House does have an ethics committee, and I've tweeted out over on X that if there was any reason to look into an ethics, have an ethics committee look into one of your own members, it might be this case. So we'll see how that goes. It has to be instigated by a member of the House for that to happen. So we'll see how that goes. But again, the town hall was really good last night. Representative Brent Crane was not attending. Apparently he had a medical issue earlier in the day, and we send our thoughts and prayers out to him and hope he's feeling better. He's not in the State House today. So again, we don't know exactly what's going on, but of course we send our good prayers out to him. All right, folks, let's continue to watch House Bill 461. And I apologize for my shaky camera work here, but that's what we're doing when we're on the move. So let's head back in there. We'll watch this vote. I'm hoping this thing passes, especially because we get to hear a lot of these folks who just like to look. If you recall, let me just back up here. If you recall what this launch program is, it was a program that was set up in order to have up to $8,000 for high school graduates to go of your tax dollars so that they can continue their education in higher education to learn a trade. And this is something that we've discussed before, where traditionally you pay your own way after K through 12 to go learn something. You go to go learn a trade or to go to college. You don't get government money up to $8,000 to do this, or your employer would pay. A potential employer would pay for you to go get training to learn a specific trade. And so this bill here, 461, will rein that in and focus, because apparently some folks were trying to use it to get a bachelor's degree and to go to a 4-year college and to pursue, all sorts of different avenues that weren't necessarily related to the in-demand careers. And again, if you look at the in-demand careers and see massage therapist and I think a public relations specialist up at the top, this is not the proper role of government, folks. All right, let's go back into this debate, and we'll catch you in a little bit later.
On this council. A few things before I move into some other areas on percentages. Folks, I'm concerned when it talks only community colleges. And I hope in the closing that this can be maybe wrapped up, and because LCSC is not a community college. LCSC is a state college that has a career and technical side to the college. And I'm concerned how this bill could affect LCSC, how it might affect some of the other colleges that offer 2-year degrees. The University of Idaho has some associate degrees that very well could be in-demand careers. So I think that is a fatal flaw in this bill, because if those are in-demand careers determined by either through the Workforce Development Council, who is using actual raw data from our Department of Labor, and how are the 9 members going to develop this matrix? Because we just know that nursing is more, has a more demand than does CNAs. I don't know, but we worked really hard so that there was no question. We used the data that was in and given to us through Commerce, through Department of Labor. I'd like to talk about where we are with this program. And we set a sunset so we could come back and look at it and give it opportunity to really see how this is going to work, right? It's still there, and that's very important. But we are jumping the gun. We are saying, let's pull out and put the onus on this committee instead of the Workforce Development Council that actually are the experts. I've also heard said out of this body, well, these are not elected officials. Well, you see we have elected officials. We have directors from some of our agencies. But folks, what is our job? Our job in this body is to set policy. And then our agencies, they then go on and they implement the policies that we have prescribed for them to do. So I see no need for that board at all. I understand if we want to tighten some of the degree areas, I'm okay with that. But this is a bridge way too far to cross. This program has initially rolled out. It's been extremely successful. We have programs that students are taking advantage of in welding, surgical tech, nursing, HVAC, graphic design, finance, engineering, dental assisting, cybersecurity. I didn't see anything unless it falls under the tech that we need folks in cybersecurity, automotive technology, ag sciences, advanced medical imaging. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that we have wait lists. Expansive wait lists, welding, 130% over what can be offered to these students because of the individual places that they don't have room. Nursing is 82%, medical science 35%, diesel technology 190%, dental related 77%. And so on. And so folks, my concern about this is a successful program, whether you voted for it and didn't like it, but this has been very successful, and it is the people's program. Our people like it. The parents, I have had more calls from parents about thanking the state because they couldn't afford to send their child. Now, is there some that we need to clean up? I could agree, absolutely, but we have representatives on that council that easily can take those to the council. Not once did anybody in this body ever say, Representative McCann, how about if we take a look at A, B, or C? Never. Not one. And now we're going to overhaul it without going the full 5 years that we agreed to go and then look at what was working and what wasn't. So, folks, there are issues in this bill, as others have said. We are limiting, and I agree that we could take a look at some of these degrees, but also, again, I feel like we take a chainsaw instead of a carving knife to fix what we need to fix. And this is a slap in the face to these people who donate hours and hours to our state, to our kids, to the development and the education of the kids going to our schools, and the adults, rather, also, who are taking advantage of it, of our adult launch. But when we sit here and then we don't want to pass the budget because we have on education that shows how successful this program is, that is really, it boggles my mind. So folks, I really hope you would think about it, because this program is successful. It's still in its infancy. We need more time to evaluate what is good and what may not be good. Right now, it's successful. The numbers are showing the success. And I don't want any of our other colleges that have 2-year degrees in them that are in demand to be left out. So I think that is, for me, one of the biggest flaws in this, that it's going to hurt some of our colleges. It's going to hurt some of the kids in those areas that cannot afford to go to another school or come down and go to CWI and take the course. But if it was offered at the U of I, they could, or simultaneously down from Malad, if they can't be able to go to their college and take it, Idaho State or wherever. So I think we need to fix that before we move forward. And so for that and many other reasons, folks, I would urge your red light.
Heard that motion. Gentleman 14.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Debate in favor.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like the good lady actually from 6 had stated that she used to sit on the board. I now sit on the board. When I started looking at the board and some of the decisions that this board actually made in the past, one of the things you'll look at there, we gave $40 million in adult workforce launch program. That's how this idea kind of came to be in the first place. And I started looking at what they spent their money on, what the decisions that this board actually met. And again, I now sit on this board, but I wasn't sitting on it at that time. But they went ahead and funded 1,132 people to go get their CDLs. We want CDL drivers, correct? Yes. Except for if you go look online, anybody was going to be paying to get CDLs. No one looked at the legislature that year actually passed legislation that had conformed with some federal requirements regarding the clearinghouse, which was a drug testing program underneath this, which also limited your being able to hold a CDL unless you're enrolled into a clearinghouse actually program, into a drug testing program within a company. No one looked into the actual decision-making things because they're not legislators, they're business people. This does not disrupt them as a council. They can still be a council, they can still make recommendations, but it's putting this money back into the control of the legislature on the decision process where this money is actually going to go. And that is what our jobs are. That's what the people elect us to be, to do. And that is all we are doing with this. This gives us as a legislature direction and control. This gives us decision-making power. Doesn't limit us from going out to anybody and asking their inputs. So we will still get input, I would imagine, from the Workforce Development Council. I will imagine we'll get input from different industries when we're making decisions on things. But it gives us as legislators better oversight and better direction and better input in the decisions made. So with that, I would ask for your green light.
Third debate on the motion. Gentleman 17.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to debate against the bill.
Has the floor.
One of the big concerns I have is the eligibility, the eligible education expenses. The eligible institution definition, which is being changed. Look, when launch came up, I said my big concern was I was concerned that kids would give money to schools that might not provide that education, might be closed, might go bankrupt. In the last 10 years, we've had a helicopter school close up after along with a substantial amount of money that was given by students to that school. We've had a court reporter school. And let me tell you about one of the court reporters, because she was my client. She had paid part of the tuition advance and then had student loans. And the school went bankrupt. So we couldn't recover anything on the amount that she had paid. We were able to get the student loan canceled, but she got nothing. It was really, really sad because she didn't have a lot in the first place. We had a very, very large private for-profit school across the street from Boise State. I think they've had probably several thousand students over the years. They went bankrupt. Same thing. Discharging the student claims, and I believe that those claims were, the student loans were forgiven by the Department of Education. And we had another school in 2021 out by the freeway. They had a huge sign on a big building out by Edwards Cinema. They're gone. They left in 2021. So my concern is, I had understood that, and maybe somebody can address this concern, I had understood that the Workforce Development Council was going to have sideboards in making their grants, so that the grants went to institutions that had financial solvency and were going to be around to take care of the student and provide the education. And I'm not seeing that in this bill. I'm not seeing any reference in here, and I admit it's a new bill, and if there is something, I would sure appreciate somebody pointing it out. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For debate on the motion. Hearing none, would the gentleman from 24 care to close? Just a second, gentlemen. Just a second, good gentleman. Gentleman 22, I apologize. There was a lot of you guys walking around back there.
I was hiding behind the pillar.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, it's a good time to hide. Ladies and gentlemen, this
Like
is
to debate the bill, good gentleman?
Yes, I'm debating in favor of the bill. It's a good
Gentleman has
bill,
the floor.
should pass. But I serve on the Broadband Advisory Board, similar setup. It does give the legislature the opportunity to look at how the money is getting spent. That's what we're doing with broadband. And I just think, and we actually don't get paid for that, in case somebody thinks that this advisory board makes money. I've been sitting on it for several years and I haven't got a dime. So, but this is just a good way of getting legislative oversight of how our money is being spent. And you probably have all seen the ads on TV and I've been thinking, I thought this program was in such high demand. Why are we advertising? I thought we had a waiting list, but I've seen ads on TV, what little bit of TV I watch. And so, Mr. Speaker and good ladies and gentlemen, this is a good step forward to get some better oversight. In the broadband, we also set criteria for the grants and stuff like that. And that's what this advisory board would do. It would look at the matrix and evaluate where you give points to and where you don't. And so, Mr. Speaker and good ladies and gentlemen, I won't take up any more of your time. It's a good bill, should pass.
Thank you, gentlemen. Further debate on the motion. Hearing none, gentleman 24 care to close the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess I would touch on one thing. In terms of the eligibility, it's up to the advisory board to select that. And so it's not like it's left uncovered. They got it covered. Mr. Speaker, this simple bill, this is a trades bill that we all wanted to see from the very beginning. It focuses on these kids. It makes this stuff available to them. The matrix, when there's more kids applying for something, then there's money available. That's when the matrix really works, because it takes those measures that we talked about, job openings, mobility, output, length of training, all of those things, and measures them, prioritizes them. So the kids that score the highest are the first ones. If there's enough money to do everybody goes. The money that isn't used in the 2-year degrees then spills over by the waterfall, goes to different directions. That's where the 4-year degrees come in. That's where the post-baccalaureate comes in. So it's a very simple bill. I'd like to yield my time to the gentleman from 25 instead of 24.
Gentleman 25 yield to close the debate. Yeah, gentleman yields, and I'll try to get closed within 20 minutes. You'll get shot, good gentleman.
I just want to point out a couple things. We've talked about adult learners several times. The only time that comes into play before this bill is drafted and after this bill is if there's excess money. And right now, there's so many students that can apply for four-year degrees and fit into in-demand careers that it could exclude many people who went in to get into two-year trade-type jobs. So the idea here in that section that people would seem to focus on the adult learners, that's money that's, left over if there's not enough applicants. So the adult learners can apply, and that whole section comes into play if there's a waterfall. There's more money than there are applicants. And it's already been mentioned because it was brought up in debate about paying the advisory board. There's not going to be no pay to the advisory boards. I've never been paid a nickel for any interim committee. I don't think any of you other have. If you do, let me know what interim committees I need to get on to. But this is a relatively simple bill, and it is focusing in-demand careers with legislative guidelines to make sure that we're getting as many students into jobs as soon as possible. And I think that's the goal of this bill. Thank you. I wish a green light, please.
Thank you, gentlemen. Base closed. Question is House Bill 461 pass the House. Clerk will lock machine. Members will cast their votes. Has every member voted? Miller, would you like to vote for your bill? Gannon. Representative Gannon. Has anybody changed their vote? Clerk will lock machine and report the pairs.
Raybold votes aye. Galaviz votes nay.
54 ayes, 60 nay, 3 absent. Excused. Majority having voted in favor of House Bill 461. House Bill 461 is passed the House. Correction title.
No correction to title.
Hearing none, the title is approved. Bill transferred to the Senate. Gentleman 22.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
$164 as amended.
As has been requested, is there objection? Hearing none, gentleman has the floor.
All right, I will be brief. 1164 as amended is a bill that will continue to streamline and modernize our building permitting process. This asks local units of government to do two things. Number one, to have a process that is published and made available to constituents or contractors as they are applying for a building permit. Number two, if it is a residential building permit, the local unit of government has 10 days to tell the citizen or contractor that they have applied appropriately. They don't have to say yes or no. They just have to say you've turned in everything you're supposed to turn in, and 20 days for commercial. This is supported by the industry, by the Association of Cities, Counties, building contractors, et cetera. A quick green light will get us to adjournment, and I'd invite you to use that.
Further debate on the motion. Gentleman 3.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to declare a Rule 80 as I do get permits doing with building.
Thank you, gentlemen. Your declaration will be known in the journal. Gentleman 12.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a declaration of Rule 80. I get building permits as well.
Thank you, gentleman 22.
Same declaration.
It's what you do. All right. Is there further debate on the motion? Hearing none, hearing no debate. Base closed. Question is, shall Senate Bill 1164 as amended pass the House? The clerk will lock the machine and members will cast their votes. Has every member voted? Miller. Has anybody changed their vote? Clerk will lock the machine, record the roll. 63 ayes, 7 absent and excused. Majority having voted in favor of Senate Bill 1164 as amended. Senate Bill 1164 as amended passed the House. Correction title.
No correction to title.
Hearing none, the title is approved. Bill will be transferred to the Senate. Without objection, the House now advance to the 13th order of business, third reading of bills, and the 11th order of business, third reading of bills, joint resolutions. The House set the third, 11th order of business. Good gentleman from 22.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ask unanimous consent that Senate Bill 1153 be placed at the top of the third reading calendar.
That's considered requested.
And that's exactly what happened. You want to pull the tape? You can pull the tape because we now got video.
Idaho is the dirt under your fingernails after an honest day's work. Idaho is the hug around your neck when your daughter spells her first word. Idaho is the written word of the law, steadfast and impartial, guarding liberty for all. Idaho is the family rifle passed down, a legacy of protection and the right to stand firm. Idaho is the echo of your own voice, unshaken and free, standing tall among the world's silenced. Idaho is the home that's built to weather storms, not empty wallets. Idaho is the quiet trust between a patient and healer, unbroken and sacred. Idaho is the hymn carried by the Spirit, gathering neighbors together in faith and purpose. Idaho is the laughter around a campfire, a family's bond growing stronger with every word. Idaho is the pioneer's will, firm and clear. We govern ourselves, free and unbound. Idaho is what America was. Let's keep it that way. Ask your legislator to sign the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge to preserve our shared values. We ride together. All Idaho lawmakers swear an oath to support the Idaho and U.S. constitutions. But how's that working out for you? Because not all Idaho lawmakers share the same values. That's where the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge comes in. 10 statements inspired by those two founding documents that are designed to preserve our shared values. Values such as education freedom, safeguarding free speech, defending our protected right to self-defense, and being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. When a lawmaker signs the pledge, they are performing an act of political courage, accepting the challenge to be a champion for our values, and serving with political integrity. To find out if your lawmaker signed the pledge, visit idahopledge.com. Paid for by Citizens Alliance of Idaho. We ride together.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Ben Taves, State Senator for District 4. First of all, I'd like to thank Chairman Guthrie for hearing this bill. It honors the numerous hours of work done by the Joint DEI Interim Work Group, which deliberated and recommended a previous version of this bill, and the countless hours, including those of the pro tem, who have worked to draft and refine this legislation. So I just wanted to thank you for hearing this. We are here today to work towards the critical goal of making our institutions of higher education places to seek truth and build relationships, not places of social justice, training, and division. Ultimately, this is accomplished by robust debate and deep conversations, not through punishment for sharing beliefs, or by looking at everything through the lens of the oppressed and the oppressors. The sad reality is that DEI actually divides, excludes, and indoctrinates, which is clearly counterproductive in developing citizens to operate in a free society. In your packets, I've provided numerous examples collected in the last year to show just how pervasive DEI is in our universities. This is undoubtedly a problem that deserves a real solution. So first, I'm going to go over, to give an overview of the sources used to draft this legislation, and then I'll walk through the actual bill. So in your packets in front of you, you'll see DEI bill sources is at the top of that packet. So the definitions portion of this legislation is a combination. It's drawn from Iowa's legislation on the same issue, National Association of Counties. We took Harvard and the University of Washington's diversity, equity, and inclusion glossaries to define the terms. Also drawn from Texas's DEI bill. For the DEI office definition, we've drawn from Iowa as well. Subsection 9 DEI office prohibition from the bills in Iowa, Texas, Alabama. Subsection 14 implicit bias reporting system prohibition is from Speech First model legislation. Subsection 16 mandatory DEI general education course prohibition is inspired by Florida's bill. What this is it's a best practices of what we have seen from other states who have been effective at addressing these issues. I'm not going to go through all of those, but in front of you, you do have the details of the rest of the sources that were drawn from. But I want to dive into the actual legislation. So when you're looking at the legislation, the first few pages are definitions. Why so many pages of definitions? Because we're talking about a weighty matter that has a lot of different facets included in it. So the first definition is for bias reporting system. The definition is for a bias reporting system is any office, department, position, or system whose function is to investigate, threaten disciplinary action, or otherwise punish enrolled students for expressions of speech protected by state or federal law, including but not limited to speech pertaining to disagreements of opinion, political beliefs or affiliations, or perceived bias, prejudice, stereotypes, or intolerance, or solicit the reporting of incidents of student speech protected by state or federal law, including but not limited to speech pertaining to disagreements of opinion, political beliefs, or affiliations, or perceived bias, prejudices, stereotypes, or intolerance. It goes on to give a definition for diversity, equity, inclusion, which means any trainings, programs, activities, or instruction that's derived from or that promotes the tenets or concepts of critical theory, including but not limited to, and then it gives a list of items that are commonly a part of DEI terminology. Going on, it defines a diversity, equity, or inclusion office. Next page defines diversity, equity, and inclusion officer, defines diversity training, defines DEI-related course, defines institution of higher education. That's G on page 4. And now we get into the meat of the bill where we're actually saying what we're trying to protect our institutions of higher education from. So subsection 2, except as otherwise provided in this section, no institution of higher education in the state of Idaho shall. And then section A deals with using preferential treatment, discrimination in admissions. Subsection 2B deals with hiring. Can't discriminate in hiring. C has to do with offices and officers. D has to do with DEI training. I'm sorry. Yeah, and then it goes on to deal with bias reporting systems. And then F deals with class requirements. This is a really important part that had a lot of time and thought put into it. It says that you can't establish curricula or designate courses at the institution in a manner that requires or otherwise compels a student to enroll in a DEI-related course. So what that doesn't do is it doesn't say you can't have DEI-related courses. We don't want a system where we're banning certain types of thoughts or ideas from being taught. We're just simply saying that you can't require or otherwise compel students to take those specific courses. Unless, and it goes on, unless they've chosen to do so based on the degree they're seeking. The next G has to do with faculty requirements. And then 3 gives exemptions. And it's that exemption where if somebody's taking a course of study that's primarily focused on racial, ethnic, or gender studies, they're excluded from the prohibitions of subsection 2F and G. The next portion has to do with reporting. It asks for a report on an annual basis that's given to our education committees in the House and Senate and to the AG's office. And then we go into the enforcement portion in subsection 5. We have first, just it allows staff or students to report. The AG would investigate, and then they would, if there was an issue, they would notify the institution, and there'd be a 30-day cure period. So this isn't meant to be punitive, it's meant to be correctional to try to get our universities in line with the law. The next portion, it does have a penalty. So if after the 30-day cure period, it's not taken care of, it does offer the ability for violations of the section up to 2% of the amount of the institution of higher education's operating expenses for the offending division, office, center, or unit within the institution of higher education where the violation occurred. It's actually a pretty light touch. So 6 goes on to offer injunctive relief for students or staff for the specific areas that deal with the students or with the staff. 7 goes into what this doesn't do. And I think this is really important to pay attention to what this legislation doesn't do, because I think it's often misunderstood. It shall not be construed to limit research by students, faculty, or other research personnel. Limit creative works by students, faculty, or other personnel. Limit activities of student organizations. So you can still have the clubs that students want to form. They can still freely associate and share their thoughts and beliefs. It doesn't limit activities of student organizations. Limit the appearance of guest speakers and performers. Limit the academic freedom of any individual faculty members. Prohibit any program or training that is generally generated by licensed attorneys to deal with Title IX, American Disabilities Act, or any other federal law. It doesn't prohibit the institution of higher education from regulating student speech or activity that is prohibited by law, or from investigating or soliciting information about potentially illegal speech. So it's not stopping. If there is speech that's unlawful, it doesn't stop the universities from dealing with that speech. That pretty much sums up the legislation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, folks, there you have Senator Ben Taves presenting the DEI bill that's been waiting for a hearing. And here we are at the tail end of the session, and it finally comes out. And this is a good bill for higher education. It's definitely something that the Trump administration and what we all voted for, if you voted for an America First agenda, this is exactly the kind of stuff we want to see in Idaho. So kudos to Senator Taves for presenting that bill finally. And it does pass out of that committee, and it'll head to the Senate floor going forward. Just real quick, I ran into Representative Tony Wisniewski in the hall just a few moments ago, and he was telling me about House Bill 355 that overwhelmingly passed the House a few weeks ago, I believe, and it's been sitting over in the Senate, getting pushback from county treasurers, I believe. It's interesting. This bill looked to provide some relief for elderly folks who are in their home who still have to pay property taxes. This is a big deal. You know, when you have paid off your home, you've been living there for decades, and yet you still have to continue to pay property taxes on something that is you've already made whole on the purchase, and the county keeps sending you property taxes. Well, until we, magically somehow get rid of property taxes, they're still owed, right? So Representative Wisniewski's idea was, how about we just put a lien on their property and not collect any taxes until they are no longer in the home? Meaning the elderly couple, if they're, towards their end of life, that perhaps maybe when they pass away, that then the estate would then owe the state the property taxes that have occurred over the past few years. This way, it will allow the folks who are living in the home to not have to pay anything, so that they can just live out their life if they're on a fixed income and not have to worry about paying property taxes to the state for something that they already own. It's a very compassionate bill, but it does have contingencies on it where anybody that takes over the property will have to pay all those back taxes, including a 6% interest rate, and even perhaps a late fee. There's a lot of elements in this bill, so no one's getting away from it. I mean, and no one's going to be taking advantage of this, because you're going to be on the hook for all this money afterwards. But at least the folks who are living on the property now will be able to be free from paying property taxes. And so that was the bill that overwhelmingly passed the House, like I said before. And the county treasurers apparently are the ones putting up a big fight. And for some reason, they're winning, even though these are the folks here that are creating the law and making sure that you folks out there are protected. So that's House Bill 355. I believe it's sitting over in the probably the Revenue and Taxation Committee over in the Senate. So if that's something that you want to feel compassionate or feel passionate about contacting, please go ahead and contact them, and let's see if we can get this over the hump and onto the Senate floor. It has support on the Senate floor. It just there's been a lot of pushback right now on that, and that's what goes on here all the time, folks. There's so many different issues, so many different bills. And sometimes they don't affect you. They may affect your neighbor. They may affect folks down the street. But if there's one bill right now that affects us all, it's what you see right here on the bottom, the Idaho Medical Freedom Act. Governor Little has 1 day left to sign this bill. Please call 208-334-2100. Call Governor Little and ask him to sign the Idaho Medical Freedom Act. Let's put to bed, put it in the grave, never to happen again, what they did from the top down during the pandemic. That's it, folks. It is Friday. I'm so glad to see you all in person down here at Boise. It was really fun to meet a lot of you. I got to meet some of you folks who are only known anonymously on X or elsewhere. So that was really great. But we'll be back on Monday, folks. The session is still going on, and we're going to continue to be here watching it, monitoring it. And we got a lot of other bills that we may not have talked about in detail on this program. But as they make their way through committee and onto the floor, we'll make sure to pay attention to some of them. So we will keep you abreast of that. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.
I think it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.